I don't know, I am a South African. I believe in ideals of Pan-Africanism. And I think as the conversation goes on, I think you'll learn and know more about me.
My name is Mamelato Mohodi. I'm here to learn. I'm not as vocal. I think from just listening to everyone who has traveled, I can't afford to travel even if into Africa.
Hi, I'm Nombulelo. I'm very passionate about Africa. I even have an Africa tattoo with Madagascar. Yeah, don't forget. As much as we are divided by borders, literally, of the places that I've been, ideally we're the same.
I think growing up in Kenya, my Africanness was never in question until I came here. So I never needed to define myself because that was what I was already. So let me say I'd like to live in an Africa, because now I'm aware that you need to actually define this thing. But I'd like to live in an Africa where you don't need to define yourself as African. It just is what it is.
I'm Nyembezi Kamini. I'm also an African. I love saying I'm an African because it's always an issue when I have to say I'm Xhosa or Zulu, or because there's a bit of confusion there.
Legend.
Actually, I'm honored to be here with you young people because there's a big gap between your time and my time.
I'm Dabalungu, I'm a content creator, I'm from Malawi. Yeah.
That's it?
I think that's the summarized version. Yeah, I'm really passionate about rewriting the African narrative. So I write stories of especially young creatives and entrepreneurs from the African continent who are changing things.
So I think I'm very happy to be here because it's just nice to be around people who also question the African identity. It's something that I've had to try and explain from a personal perspective.
Hello. Hi. Alright, I'm Keith Wako. I'm a creative. Arts, creativity, being positive, like having a positive vibe towards development and growth of young kids.
We are just hoping to move forward and have answer-driven meetups. I feel like a lot of people are diagnosing the problems and the issues, but there's really a few dedicated to answers.
My name is Daonga Nombulelo Silungwe. And I think just from my name, you can tell that there's something. I identify with about 3 countries: South Africa, Malawi, Zambia. And so I like to say that I'm a product of Pan-African multicultural love.
Growing up, I was always told that I'm Swati, but and that was from my dad. But we've never been to Swaziland. We don't have a relative in Swaziland.
It's right here.
We actually have a relative in KZN, and we've been to KZN. Yeah. But growing up, of course, with the Dlaminis, I've also found out that there's a Swati, there's a Zulu, and there's a Xhosa.
Yeah.
And some old guy from the family said, no, we actually Xhosa. So I've neglected that part of my life. I'm just Dlamini and I'm an African.
I'm Xhosa. I'm proud of it and stuff. But when we tend to use a negative aspect, it's that tribalism element that often then divides us a lot, because then we don't use that as a pride thing. It's more the stubborn Zulu.
Yeah.
But one thing that I know that what we have in common is the blackness. At least if we can push that pro-black, because if you're gonna start to think pro-Zulu first,
I actually celebrate aspects that there's aspects of my culture that, well, I'm not just Zulu, by the way, but I'm just giving a hypothetical. There are aspects of my culture that I've come into contact with that has opened an understanding that is far greater than what not far greater, but that has kind of turned upside down the definitions that I grew up being taught about being Zulu. And this is where I feel that this notion of changing the narrative is kind of essential, because who's been telling us who we are? Who's been telling us who we are? How do we accept only speaking about each other's cultural groups in stereotypes? You mean to tell me that you don't have Zulu experiences with Zulu people that are positive? Why hone in on only the negative associations and make that an identity? We can't deny that English people have their own negatives that they came with. They enslaved, but we don't ever make the mistake of confusing a behavior and a culture. We are the first people in line to go watch what's Game of Thrones. What does Game of Thrones mean? It celebrates an aspect of that culture, and we see the richness of the culture without denying that there is an English culture, and there was a very horrible history, but it isn't necessarily limited to defining an identity. So it's that kind of richness I really want to start celebrating about the way we speak about each other. I don't have a problem with someone being Xhosa if they say they're Xhosa. Do you know what I mean? I don't.
But look at it this way: you're probably one in a million that doesn't have an issue. She was saying just now that she's Xhosa, and there's all these negative connotations around Zulu people. If you're a guy, you must be a taxi driver. That's it. And there's also the same thing with the Xhosa, especially Xhosa women, that they gold diggers.
And it
Do you
happens.
understand? So if sometimes when you sit here and say, I'm proud of being Zulu, she might be sensitive towards that, and she can turn around and say, compared to, do you understand?
I mean,
you're starting something else, whereby you could say, I'm proud of being African. I'm proud of my brown skin.
Where I come from mentally is, I grew up in a household as an only girl with 5 brothers. My father was a medical practitioner. My mother was a teacher. So in the South African landscape, in KZN by the way, in the South African landscape we classify as middle class. And for most of my life, family, friends, the society kind of reinforced that. I was always made aware of that, you know. So I do come from a relative degree of privilege. I don't shy away from that. I've had access because of these things that my parents were able to accumulate in their professional spaces. So one of the things that started to make me start thinking a little about the world that I was living in is that my parents took me to Model C schools. But my dad had this thing about, in his household, no one speaks English. So he used to really flip out when you hear us like twanging in the background, like he'd really like, there's this one memory where he chopped the whole apple core in the kitchen. So he's sitting in the dining room, and he just, next thing we see an apple core flying into the kitchen. It's like, "Speak Zulu!" And we're like, sheesh, like we were annoyed by that. But from there, I started realizing how violent this thing of losing ourselves in our education, losing our identities through our education, that's where it begins, is that it's a gradual thing. It's not supposed to feel, you don't feel it as it happens. When you're young, you're not, so it starts there. So that's where, those are one of the memories that I've always kind of, initially it was like, yo, my dad is just ridiculous. Over the years it's shifted to, damn, like he helped me. Then I wake up the one day to find on Facebook a girl who I was in grade, a white girl, primary school, let me put it that way. She's now married with 2 beautiful kids, living in a farm in KZN. Beautiful, beautiful plot. On Facebook, she has an image of her child pulling a tractor, and next to the child is a babaji, a gardener, a grown, fully grown man who's old enough to be her father. And the caption reads, look at, okay, I don't remember the child's name, look at the little bus.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Okay. So, sheesh, these are moments that really yank at me, like in ways that are really, really making me think critically about what the heck am I doing in this world? You know, what am I here to do? Because it's one thing to speak in very convoluted ways about the world and what the problem is with Africanism. I've sat in all these conversations. I haven't a sense, I don't know it all, don't get me wrong. I have an idea of what it's about, but I'm still kind of navigating, finding my way, around what really applies to me. And then I'm waking up also to the reality that I'm also a black woman. I mean, I'm not just black, I'm a black woman. And there are spaces where just being a woman in this world, in this country, where it's just reduced to nothing. And there are many, many experiences that I can reference. Okay, these are the realities of being a young woman in this country, maybe in this continent, well, actually in this continent today. So this is my challenge. How do I then adjust? I'm finding that I'm coming across these nuggets that are just moments that prove that white people's fucked us over. It's like it goes beyond just the economy. We're still scratching at economies. We don't realize that, hey, even the way we think we speak about each other as Xhosa Zulu, it's all. I mean, even the hostile ideas was a legislated, plotted, planned thing. Separate them, make them each other's enemies, and obviously that has evolved into a culture. That's evolved into cultures where we actually find very great referencing of these stereotypes. And I mean, which group is free of stereotypes? None.
Just today, I was like, Sunday. So what was happening this Sunday? If you check out Zola was manhandled his wife. Some guy stabbed the neighbor. Arthur beat his wife, girlfriend. His girlfriend. Drew Masilela also held a gun. There's there was 6-7 celebrities all manhandling women. And that's the society we live in.
Like, let's say you've organized a date with her, and you're walking her home, and as you walk her home, you come across one of another gentleman who's proposing to her. She could leave you right there and start walking with him, and you are not allowed to. Yeah. You don't do anything, and that was the definition of manhood. Yeah. Fast forward to today. And then we have people who are... So this thing of identity for me is really a tricky one, because when we're speaking about identity, for me, it's like... I'm seeing it with masculinity more specifically, where we think we know what the traditional... Our own definition of what we used to frame as our traditional identity of what manhood should be, or masculinity rather. But we don't realize how colonialism has really, really, played its role in dehumanizing us. That's the reason why, the levels of violence on black women's bodies are so much more heightened, because white people would say a black woman can't be raped. That's impossible. They like it. There was no way you could go to a court and report a rape case, because constitutionally you were not rapeable. So this is the history of that has really played its role in the way in which masculinities, have been kind of evolving over time. So, I mean, these are my experiences that I'm going through and constantly thinking about and reflecting on, and trying my utmost best to make sense of it. I don't know it. I still haven't kind of captured what it is that I'm going to do about it.
African men are not taken care of. That's always been my personal thing. African men are not taken care of. And we come from a place by the community.
By home.
By home.
Yeah.
we come from a place where a man is not supposed to cry, right? And as a man, again, we've got this side that says a man is the head of the home. Now, with everything that she's spoken about, you still look at your man in terms of you must provide, you must do this, you must lead the way. But if you look at our culture in this day and age, there's your take a girl child to work thing. There's women are nurtured, right? But it's I feel that it doesn't have value if you're not taking care of the men as well. Because what happens is the community will take care of Nombulelo. They will take you to good schools. They will give you everything that you need. And then you go home to Utemba, who's uneducated, who knows nothing. And when you come up with ideas, you're not the man. I'm the man. So whatever I say goes. Right? I feel this is why, as African men, we where we are in terms of rape and if you can't cry, if you can't release your tears, you release it somehow. I might be wrong. This is the only way that we can sort of start to sort this out, where we sit down and have conversations. I'll tell you today, the marches that we have are not going to help us. They're not doing anything. Because we've become so cultured into a march. It's become an outing.
Yeah. I have two brothers. My parents are separated. In the course of the separation, there was a lot of focus on the girls. Are the girls okay? Are they dealing with it? Should we take them for a psychologist? And everyone sort of ignored, especially my older brother. Everyone sort of ignored how he was dealing with it because he must just cope. You know, he's what, 5 years younger than me, but he must just cope. Only through my mother and my aunts pushing us to speak about what's going on, let it out, talk about it, talk about how you feel, that I feel that my brothers now are going to make good men, they're going to make good husbands because we've allowed them to feel.
That's really just from an emotion. Yeah, that's
from an emotional point of view.
For me, you specifically, you cited that black men are told not to cry. When do you think this began? Okay. Do you agree that the violence against women has been increasing, or has it been decreasing? Increasing. And all along, black men have been told not to cry. Like I was saying, the dehumanizing of the black bodies has also been on the rise, right?
But then you know what happens then, and it goes back to men not being taken care of. If for argument's sake,
who must take care of them?
The community, like I said, the families.
Who must take
care of
I have a son, so my son, who must take care of my son?
You can also take care of your son.
It's me. So it's us. So we cannot blame the community. I can't blame the community.
Okay. So can we throw it back to the speaker because she's still speaking?
I'd like you to answer to yourself. Maybe just think about it. When you say the community has failed us, could you just ask yourself specifically, how have the women failed in the community? How have they failed the men, the young men? And then ask yourself, how have the men in the community failed women? The young men. Because I think it's an interesting thing that this proposition you're raising, because in my understanding of observation that I have of the South African landscape, like almost 80% of the minute income that black women make is what is keeping communities together. And the larger portion that black men are earning compared to black women is just wasting away in things that don't come back to the community. So when we speak about communities that are failing young men, I think we've also got to have that those particular things that are unfolding.
The idea is we are receiving, and that's been our challenge. We've been receiving for 200, 300, 400 years. We've been receiving. We've been receiving. We create, and there's this myth that we don't create. Africans don't create.
Because the thing is, the African narrative as exported has always been the negative one. The Western narrative has always been the positive one. So we are likely to embrace their story and ignore ours, or even hate ours to some extent. But we have a lot of beautiful things happening on this continent. And the good thing is, I think in the last 7 years, since the Economist published the Africa Rising story, what's happened is the West is now craving African content. So if you look at general media, for example, you look at a lot of stories that are coming from the continent than never before. So not all those stories are positive, but at least now we have got more African artists on the Billboard store.
Yeah.
Now we have more artists, more African writers selling in the US or in the UK. So there is a progress, but I think the progress now needs to be more intentional.